people. And those are the people we are here about. Not ourselves, those people. We need to bring down barriers, boundaries, and barricades. We need to enable these people to trade with and amongst each other. We need to facilitate them in those endeavors. We therefore must build for them the requisite infrastructure, the digital infrastructure that is so desperately needed to take these amenities straight to them. We have begun to lay the foundations. COMESA, EAC, SADC, tripartite free trade area, now the African continental free trade area, must become markers and references of this epic journey, this revolution that seeks to transform lives, empower people, real people. And so we are here today to declare our commitment to this cause. I know my brother, the President of the Republic of Zambia, is an able foot soldier in this revolution. I join you too.
With digital developments, with technology, we should be talking about non-stop border posts. Non-stop border posts. Because technology allows it, because we've agreed to work together, because we can now be able to share knowledge of what a truck packing in Durban, in Walvis Bay, in Dar es Salaam, in Lobito, what it's carrying. We can see it on a single window. Why should we have to stop this truck on the borders? And today we are here talking about the digital platforms that will allow our goods and services to move between our countries. For a consumer who needs that good for their routine business activities, including just to have dinner, to have lunch. So clearly, SG, we want to thank you once more for this forum, that we are advancing, we're reaching consensus within the framework of what we've decided to do. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area. I also want to appreciate President Boko's comment, the building blocks, SADC, East African Community, West African Community, Sahel, North Africa. These must fall in line through issues such as common standards, regulations, laws that we need to address. Unfortunately today, President Boko, my brother, you are the only head of state together with me here, so I'll be referring to you. But we must take decisions to rapidly dismantle these rigidities. For us to do that as heads of state, as chairpersons or leaders of our cabinets, we need you, the ministers, to checklist these rigidities clearly. And for the ministers to do that, their staff, the permanent secretaries, the directors in the ministries, must quickly provide this matrix of issues, working with the private sector.
And we have to come together and better our lives in a new way and a new fashion. And this forum is that opportunity that presents itself for us to take advantage. Africa's contribution to the international trade remains very low, at less than 3% of global trade, and accounting for a paltry 16% intra-Africa trade. Your Excellency, allow me to say that again. The intra-Africa trade is only 16% within ourselves. 84% Africa trades with the rest of the world at its own expense. Is that Africa holds approximately 30% of the world's known mineral reserves that are key to the green growth agenda. That is copper, cobalt, manganese, lithium, and nickel. The largest producers of minerals used in the electronic industries are African states. Petroleum and coal are the most abundant minerals in 22 out of the 54 African countries. Top produced metals in 11 African countries include gold, iron, titanium, zinc, and copper. Industrial minerals include diamonds, gypsum, salt, sulfur, phosphate, and demand for these products remain high. If anything, it continues to get higher and higher. 2/3 of the world's arable land is on the African continent. Yet Africa imports much of its food to feed its people outside the region. Africa's population is youthful. 60% of this population is below the age of 25, a resource that can be harnessed to transform Africa. And when we talk about diversifying our economies into agriculture, making our arable lands productive, Your Excellencies, you have worked together to make sure that you support each other in the agricultural sector. While Zambia is beginning to be a net exporter of fertilizer, working in collaboration with different other countries, Botswana has come on board to invest in this sector, even here in Zambia. A demonstration of Africa changing the narrative, supporting each other in making sure that we develop ourselves. While we produce fertilizer, Botswana and many other countries get it. Zambia also goes to buy products that are produced by the other African countries. Like now, Zambia has gone from moving to using 25% of Africa's salt to 87% of Botswana's salt on our shelves.
The AfCFTA Secretary General Wamkele Mene urged Africa's youth to harness digital platforms for content creation and income generation, emphasizing the need for economic value retention within the continent.
Through digital platforms, the African continent has exposed the world to the creativity of Africans, the ingenuity of Africans, and the innovation of Africans in the area of the creative industry through various platforms for streaming content. African content creators are leveraging digital platforms to build global audiences, showcasing the diversity of our continent, generating incomes, and creating jobs for millions and millions of young people. The challenge, of course, is that where these incomes are generated, the bulk of the incomes remain and reside outside of our continent. The Protocol on Digital Trade in its implementation must reverse this trend and must ensure that African content based on digital technologies and the revenue that it generates, that it resides on our continent. The challenge, therefore, is that we must develop the capacity to nurture and to create an enabling environment for content creators, for innovators, for young entrepreneurs to take advantage of this market of 1.4 billion people. The good news is this: Africa's digital economy continues to grow significantly. Projections indicate a substantial contribution of over 180 billion United States dollars, amounting to 5.2% of Africa's GDP in 2025, and is estimated by the year 2050 to reach over 712 United States dollars, accounting for 8.5% of Africa's combined GDP. Projections, according to the IMF, about Africa's digital economy, its size, and the capacity that our economy has to deliver.
The AfCFTA agreement and its protocol on digital trade signals a bold new chapter for Africa, with accelerated cross-border trade powered by homegrown, Africa-focused digital solutions. This protocol is the backbone of Africa's digital transformation, unlocking cross-border data flows, opening new markets for our businesses, accelerating innovation at the continental scale, catalyzing transformative growth, and promising the expansion of e-commerce through harmonized standards, simplified online transactions, and inclusive participation for all. It is borderless, fast, and inclusive, capable of leapfrogging structural barriers and creating exponential value in years, not decades. The stakes are too high to do otherwise, and the time is now.
President Boko and his Zambian counterpart, Mr. Hichilema, called for the removal of trade barriers, urging African nations to translate discussions into tangible actions.
Involves in critical respects the reform of legal regimes, some of them inherited, that impede trade, that obtrude to prevent the free flow of goods and services across countries. So it's going to be a critical starting point to conclude negotiations on the digital trade protocol, which will result in a harmonization of rules, of standards, and of principles that will facilitate trade amongst African countries, among African people. Botswana produces the best quality beef in the world, if I may say so myself. I bet you've never in any top restaurant encountered an advertisement that says Botswana beef sold here. But you've encountered Wagyu. In relation to coffee, they'll tell you Blue Mountain coffee sold here. In relation to goods and products from Africa, the issue of provenance is never acknowledged, even in passing. So it's going to be very important for us to raise the profile of our products, make them visible. I was talking to President Cyril Ramaphosa a few days ago, and he said in South African retail outlets, he would like to see Botswana products, Zambian products, products from across Africa, traded, sold. And we need, through these digital platforms, to enable this to happen. One Nigerian friend of mine says they eat a lot of beef, they need beef in Nigeria, and he says, well, if we come to Botswana, we'll finish all your care. Now we need to service that market, but aggregate, bring Zambia on board, bring Namibia, bring others,
ask governments on the continent to embrace the private sector. So we work as one. We don't work in compartments, separate compartments. We work as one. Because when you talk of economies of scale, ability to produce sufficient to meet the demand of the point, we tell to the private sector. And sometimes we tend to the private sector symbolically, but inherently we resist the private sector. I know what I'm talking about. So we need to get the private sector to really become true partners as we soldier on the African continental trade area, the digital platforms we're talking about here. And also for the private sector to see governments as their partners. And when there are issues for the private sector to come on board with their governments, with their regional bodies, with the secretaries, which our SG checks, so that we are speaking or singing from the same hymn. I come from business, I know what I'm saying. And when I was out there, I was always pointing a finger at the government. I'm here now, I do realize my colleagues still feel the way I do. So it's our job to open and break the barriers so that we can quickly address Africa's needs, including the investments in the digital area. It's private sector that once we've broken down the rules, the laws, inhibiting laws, the rules, and also other nuisance factors, we can then move Africa, social Africa forward. All the changes were made. I think it's important that first I talk about education, then now we will request the digital application in our curriculum, in our teaching. Very important. The strides that we're making, still a lot of work to be done, but we now have a lot more people, students, that are actually taking their lessons, doesn't matter which particular area, on digital platforms.
Both presidents have committed to work aggressively and collaboratively to strengthen economic ties.
It broadens the scope, it expands the horizons for our collaboration as neighboring countries, but also gives us access to a broader and bigger market. It will enable us, for instance, to aggregate our products so that where Zambia on its own could not meet the demand from a certain market, with Botswana, and maybe others coming on board, we should then be able to service such markets. So it's very, very important. We'll also learn from each other.
We also talked about the investments that we need to make with each other in Botswana, in Zambia, to deepen those investments, which will basically stitch more glue to ourselves. Common interest, vested interest, common assets. We also touched, as the President said, my brother, on us wanting to learn on how you have managed your diamond business, so we can model a few of those issues around our emeralds business.
On the sidelines of the Digital Forum, President Boko met with AfCFTA Secretary General, where he advocated for more synergies between government and the private sector, incorporating private sector contributions into Africa's development agenda.
We pay lip service. We only mention private sector involvement episodically. We need to locate the private sector firmly within the discourse of how we go forward. We have governments operating away from and the private sector itself also isolated, and both parties talking at and not to each other. They are almost always at cross purposes because there's no meaningful engagement. So one of the things that we need to now put in motion are firm and concrete ways in which governments engage with the private sector at national level, and then we position the private sector firmly within the developmental agenda of Africa, now at continental level. It's very important for these issues to be understood and to be dealt with. And I am certain that you are already well on your way to bringing about suggestions and ways in which we can achieve this. Because without it, we will have serious problems. In Botswana, as I was indicating to you, we have a national development plan. The one that is being developed is the National Development Plan 12. Covers a period of 5 years. It should have begun. But we had to delay it deliberately because we took the view that it wasn't properly a national development plan. It was government's own ideas and what government wanted to do. But government has to be in partnership, in a meaningful partnership with the private sector. And when the private sector hasn't made any contribution, hasn't itself outlined what its aims and its objectives, its plans are over perhaps the same period, then we continue the processes of operating at cross purposes. And so we now are engaging everybody in society, but more pointedly the private sector, so that they can also participate in this agenda of development. And I think across all layers, all the way up to the African Union, we need to pay particular attention to this.
That we create meaningful space for the private sector. Honorable Ministers, I was telling the Excellencies Presidents yesterday that during the COVID period, the private sector raised 250 million in less than 2 weeks. And when the funds were disbursed to the African Union, they couldn't spend $1 because they talked about procurement rules, they talked about accounting procedures internally, and the private sector said, just keep the money, we'll do our own thing. So the money was not spent. So the feeling by private sector on our continent is that the African Union is just not serious. So we have to look at how it is reformed. We have already had discussions with the individual private sector on this matter, and we have agreed in principle that at the highest level that they should have an annual or biannual interaction with our heads of states, so that our heads of states know exactly what has to be done to move our continent forward. So, for example, on this issue of movement of persons, which has been a problem for a long time, it is something that the private sector deems as a constraint to further investment and growth. We had a situation where somebody who was investing $500 million in a country was denied a visa to have a board meeting in that country where they are investing $500 million. So these are the challenges that I believe we have to solve with our heads of states, which are within reach. So, Excellency President, thank you very much for your willingness to engage, particularly on this issue of the private sector. We will come back to you once we have concretized the idea, so that we put it into practice.
The AfCFTA digital trade is an exciting prospect for Botswana, bringing with it the promise of economic growth, increased regional integration, and enhanced trade opportunities. With it, Botswana can leverage creating jobs, improving services, and augmenting national coffers.
ne re lebile tsa go thohatsa mo dikganyeng tsa madi ka dimisano ya madi ga gare ga ba e leng gore ba dira dithoto le ba e leng gore ba rekisa one madi ja ke gone ha e leng gore go na le gepe teng ha e leng gore ba na bontsi ba ka tsena teng mme mo gongwe ke gone go dira mo go bidiwang apps tse e leng gore di thohatsa tsone dilo tse di ka dirisiwang mo e leng gore go hapanwa jalo dithoto le dikitso kana di-services yaanong ke tsone tse e leng gore we must leverage mo go tsone ne re ntse re le puso e sa e tsenang e le gore nngwe ya dilo tse re batlang go di eteletsa ko pele ke gone go tsena mo maranyaneng tota gape le go gwetlha ditiro ka one maranyane ka gore lemogile gore lehatshe kana mahatshe a tsamaela ko bogolo thata e leng gore a setsa a thabologile ba lemogile gore tiriso ya maranyane e thogatsa dilo mme ebile e dira gore le ditiro di gwetlhege motho mo go dirisong yone ya maranyane so ke so se leng gore re lehatshe la Botswana re ntse re e le gore lebile gore re tsamaela teng se se re bang hano ke gone gore ba bua puo e re bua ya gore dilo di thogadiwe gore le di-service ko bathong ba je bareki go nne motho gore yo rekang mme ebile gape a sa kganelwe ke gore go na le bordera gare ga mahatshe be le gore o ka kgona go reka ko lehatshe lengwe la batlang go reka teng ko e leng gore dithoto tseo di ka bonwa teng mme bogolo thata mo Aforika ka gore se re bona gore mahatshe a konte a setsantsa ipaakanya gore ba tsenye melawana e leng gore ira gore go nne thata gore re tswelele re babisana le bona re sale re hitilwe ke ba se re le mo stopong ba re lehatshe gore e be re le gore dithuto tse tsa maranyane re di gapetse ko thoko kana re di beetse gore ke tsa for a selected few mme go tlhokagala gore yaanong re di tsenyeletse le mo dikolong mo disilabaseng tsa dikolo gore bana ba le ko tlase ba simolole go ithuta go dirisa boranyane ga se social media ke go dira ditiro ke go dira dilo tse e leng gore di tseneletse di ka tsena mo theko le thekisong rona re dirisa social media makgwa bone ba dirile yone social media ba dira madi ka yone so re batla go bona Batswana ba le mo mogameng one wa go ira dithuto tse di tshwanang le tsone tsa bo social media tse e leng gore ka moso di tsoga di dira ditiro ebile di tisa le letseno mme gape go botlhokwa go ratolose le loago lone la maranyane jaaka o bua inthanete gore go batho ke so se e leng gore goromente o setse a se saletse morago go pele ka sone go na le ra itse gore go na le di-free internet spots across the country mme go batla go tswelela go nna ya le go nna le ko e leng gore gongwe le gongwe tota ga o tsamayang teng go na le internet sengwe se bagwebi ba teng bangwe re ka sone ke gore ga o tsamaya mo tseleng ya A1 ga gona connectivity e thamaletseng o tsamaya go nna le ga go thaelang teng kana ga go senang connectivity teng gone mo gore a gore ga e le gore dirisa yone A1 le yone tsela e leng gore ke yone ya go tsamaisa dithoto mme be le gore connectivity along the road ga ya nna sentle gore a gore go kgoreletsa yone tsamaiso ya dithoto ga gare ga lehatshe la Botswana ke sengwe se goromente a tshwanetseng gore a se lebe mme a se dire a diragatse gore go se ka ga nna le yone misima eo e tang wela ka yone ga o tsamaya mo lehatsheng la Botswana.
In order to fully benefit from the AfCFTA digital trade, Botswana has to play catch-up to derive maximum benefits from the digital economy.
Government needs to work with private sector. AfCFTA is about trade, and traders is the private sector. Government can only provide the enabling environment. So policies, legislation, programs from the policies should not be done in isolation. Consultation becomes very key in everything that you do. This fora, even following the protocol, it enabled consultation. So at the end of the day, that part becomes very important. Deliverables, targets. President Boko yesterday in his official opening did say that for us to be able to attain what we endeavor is that we should have deliverables, specified targets, which we can actually also reflect back, monitor, and see where to move and evaluate whether they're working for us, whether they're not working for us. So at the end of the day, it's about proactiveness, activeness, but based on consultations, the recommendations which have been made by the private sector, who are the only ones who will be able to make the AfCFTA relevant or irrelevant. As at Oyo State, Nigeria, that is the principle. Even as we domesticate the protocols, we still have to come back to the people, private sector, and say, how do you think government should domesticate in terms of the programs that are meant to support for the realization or not? So in Botswana, I believe that is what we should do. So far, in terms of government's direction, I'm very happy that President Boko decided to halt certain things so that we go through the consultation process.
The AfCFTA Secretariat remains resolute in ensuring that Africans achieve great strides in all economic segments and reminded participants that the ambitious call to action at the forum need concerted efforts to achieve the desired results within a short time.
The AfCFTA Secretariat is deeply committed to ensuring that there's space for Africans to express their views, to take ownership of Africa's economy, that we certainly provide that space across all of the important segments of Africa's economy, whether it is agriculture, digital trade, as well as women and youth empowerment. The call to action that Dr. Oduwole read out is ambitious, bold, forward-looking, and shall require all of us to work together. It is not only the governments that will be able to achieve the transformation that we all want to see. It shall be governments working with the private sector, with youth formations, civil society, in an inclusive manner to tackle the challenges of our continent. It is not anybody else but us who is going to change our continent. It is not the Americans, it is not the Chinese, it is not the British, it is us Africans who will have to transform our continent. We have a call to action to implement. We have a lot of work to do. Each and every one of you in this room has a very important role to play in ensuring that this vision that we expressed over the last 2 days, that it becomes a reality. We create jobs in our continent. We create innovation in our continent. We create competitiveness in our continent so that young Africans stop dying and being buried deep in the oceans of the Mediterranean as they seek better opportunities elsewhere. And
there are many things that are produced in Zambia, but Nigeria imports them outside Africa. Many things that Rwanda is consuming, that South Africa is producing. Many things that Togo is producing, but we are getting them outside Africa. What our heads of state say is, can the CFTA have a certain office that looks around Africa and says, do not export this before our neighbor has it. Do not import this outside the region, give it. Buy it from your neighbor. It is the only way we are going to stop capital flight. It is one of the ways we are going to trade with each other and grow our abilities to strengthen our economies. So I thought I could emphasize that point. The other takeaway, the protocol on digital trade remains a precedent that the world will have to learn from. However, the success of the protocol will require countries to achieve a few things. To fully domesticate the protocol and implement its provisions. As Zambia, we concluded the domestication of the AfCFTA agreement in December 2024, and this in turn makes the protocol legally enforceable here in Zambia. Provide incentives for digital products and innovations to catalyze more interest and private sector investment in the digital space. colleagues and ministers, there is need to provide incentives to digital facilities to attract more investment in this area. And when we talk about attracting investment, yes, we can invest in each other's countries, but we also have to learn from our strategic partners from outside the world and catch up with the technology that they have as our partners.
The African Continental Free Trade Area Digital Trade Forum concluded its inaugural conference by solidifying that digital trade is a key driver for Africa's pursuit of economic development and integration.
So me ki boye gape ke go dumedisa le wena nkamogele ka ile ka kwa lenteng kwa borwalo kwa botsheka jwa hatsi le mo khasong e popota ya Botswana tonight me go ne diphetogo tsa boeteledipele mo dithopong tsa maloko a khuditamaga ya party yo rato mokraga Botswana Democratic Party BDP tse di tshwere jalo ka tsatsi la mapeo matlhatso ka go motšing ko maung me fela go ntse jalo go ga gona mme o peto ta yo fentse mo dithopong tseo yo ka tswang ana di emetse primaneng eno re buisana le moitsanape wa tsa sepolotiki re ke a leboga dipogiso go tlhalotsa gore se se rae mo parting ya BDP segolo jang re lebile dikgang